Hello my friends, and welcome to this tutorial where we're going to build an invoice manager, and we're going to be using NextJS. We're going to use Postgres and Prisma version 7, which is the latest version. So stick around. It's going to be an interesting project. So first off, I'm going to click on get started, and it should take me to my invoice page, and then I'm just going to try to create an invoice. Let's just say we want to create a social media, or no, well, social media consulting, but we're just going to add a different name. So let's just say we want to create for John Doe. All right, and then we're going to do just $10, or we can do whatever amount really, but I'll just stick with $10. I'll create for this email, and we're going to need to add an invoice link. So for us to add an invoice link, I would actually like to add an actual invoice link for this. So I'll copy this social media consulting, or let's just say web design consulting. So web design consulting, to make it a bit different. And then I'm just going to come here and say that I want to create a payment link. This is Stripe, by the way. It's a test dashboard. I'll say create payment link, and then I'm just going to put that name there. Click add, new product, and then just give it the price you want. So in our case, we want to do $10, and then just click on add product. Obviously, I expect your invoices to be more than $10. Once you've done that, you can come to the after payment to make sure everything is the way you want it to be, and then just click on create link. Once you've created your link, you can now copy that link and then come back to your project and add it. Now, status will be default pending, and then we're going to set the due date to Friday. All right, so that's in 2 days. Now, what if for some reason you added a wrong email? Obviously, whoever your client is not going to get your invoice and all of that. So let me try to add a wrong email. I'll just add a couple of numbers after this email to make sure it's wrong, and then I'll click on create invoice. Let's see what happens. So give it a couple of seconds, and just like that, it tells you that the email is invalid and does not exist. So even if it's a Gmail, it still tries to check, does this email actually exist? So that's one of the things that we're going to be able to do in this project. We're going to add an email verifier, and it's free. So once we are done, we're sure that we want to do this, we can just go ahead and click on create invoice. So I'll click on create invoice, and just like that, the invoice has been created and set to pending. So now let me go to that email and see. You can see here I got an email from Invoice Manager, and look at it, web design consulting from John Doe. And then I'll just open it up, and this is what the email invoice looks like. So the customer gets to click on pay, and then it brings them to this page where they can just add their credit card details and pay. So I'm just going to add the test Stripe credit card, and then I'll click on pay. So I'm also going to give it a couple of seconds, and it's going to complete. And just like that, the payment has been made. Now let me go back to my app, my invoice manager, and I'm going to refresh this page. Let's see if the status is going to be updated. So refresh, and as you can see here, the status has been updated to paid. Wonderful. So now there's another thing, there's another catch, right? What if the user does not pay for this invoice? Well, I'm going to show you how you're going to set up a reminder system. So if a user has not paid, right, for let's say in 24 hours, you can set up a reminder system that will send them a reminder email with the details of the payment. You can set up for multiple different dates. So you can do 24 hours after the invoice was created. You can do 2 days, you can do 3 days, just as much as you want. So I'll show you how you can do that also, and you can manage all your invoice from your app. So that's about it. If you feel like this is something that you want to learn, then stick around, and we're going to do that in the next video. All right, so now let's go ahead and set up our project. Now I already have a starter repository. You can see here we have invoice manager starter. So you can just clone this repository because it already has like the basic setup and all of that. So for you to do that, you just need to click on this code and just click on the HTTPS link, this clone link, and then, or you can just download the entire repository if you like. That's the download the zip file and unzip it, but it's easier to just clone it. So once you've done that, all you need to do is come to open an empty folder where you want your project to be, and then say git clone, and then paste in that URL. then just add a dot / so that it clones into this URL. So hit enter, and once you've done that, the next thing you need to do is to install the required dependencies. So you just say npm install, so npm I, and hit enter. It's going to install all the dependencies you need. Now, after you've done that, then the next thing you need to do is to set up your environment variables. Now, if you come here to the repository, the starter repository, you're going to see this .env.example. Now, these are the environment variables that we need to set up. So this one is for our database URL, and this other one, so Stripe, and then this mail API key, which helps us to send email, verify email, and set up email automation. All right. So I'm just going to walk you through the individual setup. So for the first one is, let me just do Control P, example. All right. So this first one here is our database URL. And for this work, I'm going to be using neon.tech, or sorry, neon.com. It's actually .com now. So let me bring in that. So all you need to do, right, is create a free account if you don't have one with Neon, and create a project. So if I go to the home page here, you can see here I can just say create new project, and then I'm just going to give the project a name and click on create. So it's going to take maybe I think less than a minute to create the project. And once you've created the project, you can see I've created invoice manager tutorial. So let me open this project. So once you've created the project and it has opened, just click on connect. If you click on connect, it's going to bring up this interface here. This is the connection string that you need. Now, obviously the password is hidden, so you first have to click show password before you copy this connection string. So copy your connection string and put it in your .env file. So your actual .env file, that's where you need to put it. I'll take this away, and here you're expected to create a .env file and then just replace this whatever with your connection string. So that's it. Now the next thing we need is the mail API key. So for that, you need to open another tab and say mailapi.dev. So that's the website. Now for this one, you can actually start for free. Like you can send emails, verify emails, and all of that. What you need to do is you need to first create a free account. So I'll just click on get started for free. I've already created an account, so it's just going to take me to my dashboard. Now in this your free account that you've created, you need to come to project and create a project. So I'll click on create project, and then I'll just say invoice manager tutorial, and here I'm just going to add an actual domain that exists. So this is invoice manager.xyz. I think I bought it for like $1.5 on Namecheap, and then just click on create project. So it's going to create that project, this one here, and then click on view project. You see there's nothing here, we've not sent any email, and then just copy the API key. So copy and come to your project and then just add it here. So that's the second thing you need to do. Now the third thing is you need to copy your Stripe credentials. So we're moving fast, right? So let me put in my API key first. So here am I in my Stripe account. So let me go to the home page. This is a test account, yeah, obviously. So right here on my home page, you can see that I have this publishable key, which I can just click to copy, and then I have the secret key. So you need to copy those, and this is PK for publishable key. So paste your publishable key there, and then your secret, paste it here. Now the last thing you need to bring in is your Stripe webhook. You see how fast this thing is going? Now for you to bring in your Stripe webhook, you actually need to first create the webhook, right? So I'm going to come here and search for webhook, and then I'll just click on webhook. So now for this webhook, what you need to do here is you need to say you want to add a destination. I'm adding a live webhook. So you can set up a local like webhook listener, but I want to add it straight up live webhook. So I'm just going to click on add a destination, and then I'll scroll down, and then I just want to search for what I want to listen for, the event I want to listen for. So I'll say checkout.session And let me just scroll down. So I want to listen for checkout.session.completed. So select that and say you want to continue. Now it's going to give you this option. You want to choose your webhook endpoint, and then you say continue, and then you want to add the URL that you want Stripe to call whenever a payment is made or whenever a session is completed. So my current URL, let me just add it here, because if you come here, you see that my URL is invoicemgr.vercel.app. So let me come back here and then I'm just going to paste that in. So it's invoicemgr.vercel.app/API/webhook/Stripe. Now I need to make this different from the previous one or the existing one. So I'll say invoice mgr, I'll say hyphen tutorial. So just to make it different. Then I will now create the destination. Meanwhile, I shouldn't forget this. All right. Now, so let's go ahead and create the destination. And that's it. Now, once you've created this destination, if you scroll down a bit, you're going to see this sign-in secret. Now, this is your webhook secret. So all you need to do first is to view it. So you click on reveal secret, and then you can now copy this secret and paste it right here in your .env Stripe webhook. You see now? So that's how easy it is. Obviously, if you saw any of my secret, I'm just going to, they are all test accounts, and I'm going to change everything before this video is over. So now we've set up our project, we've set up our environment variables. In the next video, we're now going to start, building and writing code. All right, I'll see you in the next one then. All right, so once you've set up correctly, then there are just 3 commands you need to run to properly connect to your own Postgres database, assuming you're also using Neon. So these are the 3 commands. So first off, you need to initialize Prisma and set your data source provider to PostgreSQL, and you need to run Prisma migrate, and then you need to run Prisma generate. So these are the 3 commands that you need to run for you to now start. So once you've done that, just run npm run dev and you're good to go. Okay, so now let us come to our project here. So you can see we just have this header, and we basically have just this regular Next.js homepage. So we're going to start from the homepage. I'll say Control P and I'll say page. Now this entire page, in fact this entire file, I'm just going to replace it with something that I'm just going to paste in. Let's just say RFC. So we're just going to put a very simple homepage that goes to the invoice and back. So all right, so I'm going to come back here and I'll just bring in that. Essentially what we have here is just a very simple homepage with a heading, some text, and a link. That's it. So I'll just go ahead and save, and then I'll come here. So you can see it just says simple invoice manager, invoice management, blah blah blah, and then a button. Obviously this button doesn't go anywhere yet because we've not created the invoice page. If I click in it, you're going to get a 404 page. So let's come back. So which means we have to start working on the invoice page right now. So come over to your app and click on, I think it's invoices. So say invoices. And then we're just going to create the landing page, which is going to be page.jsx. All right, let's just do RFC, just a barebone component, and now we should have something. If we go to invoices, we have page right here. So let's go back to the home page and we're good to go. Now that's not all we're going to do, no, because we're also going to have to inside of the invoices, we're going to have other things like the new. So for example, if we want to create a new invoice, where I'm going to create or you know what, let me just do it one after the other. So I'll do like this, and then I'll create a folder which I'll call new, and then inside of the new I'll create a page. So this is going to be page.jsx. so that's it. Then the final one, which is going to help us view an invoice, right? I'll do like this, and I'll just say square brackets, and inside of it I'll say ID, because we're going to view the invoice by the ID, and then we're just going to do the page.jsx. So we've created all the routes that we need for this entire project, And I think the first thing we should do is to start to create the form. So I'll come here and I'll say RFC, and then I'll also do that here, RFC. Okay, good. So if I come to the invoice page, however, there's no way to link to the create invoice page. So maybe I'll just add a link for that inside of the invoice. So here inside my invoice page, let's just have a link, you know, and the link is just going to go to invoice and new. I'll just say create invoice, create invoice. All right, so that's it. Don't forget to import the link from next link, and that's it. So if we come here, at least we have a way of navigating to the create invoice page, and which is empty for now. So now let's go ahead and start working on the create invoice page. Now for that, we're going to come to the component folder, and we're going to create another folder which we're going to call invoice. This invoice will contain all of the invoice related components. So the first one is invoice form.jsx. So that's our first component. Now let's just do RFC, so that this invoice form, I expect it to receive the invoice object. So I'll just say invoice VOICE, and by default it's going to be set to null by default. Okay, so go ahead and save. And then if I come to this new here, this is the page to create a new invoice, right? So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to bring in the components for that. So instead of, you know, typing one after the other, just bring this in. So basically what we have here is we just have this page, new invoice page, and then we have a H1 with these styles that says create new invoice, and then we just bring in the invoice form. Just to be sure that we properly brought in the invoice form, I'm just going to do like this, and then I'm just going to save. So now in the invoice page, we now have this create new invoice text, and then this text that says invoice form. We're making progress. So let's go ahead and create the invoice form, which looks something like this. So just a simple form really. So I'm going to come here and we're going to go to the invoice form. Let's open it up. And I think at this point we can close the things we don't need so that we have a neat workspace. Is this okay? So in my invoice form, we're going to start by adding this input. So but before then, let's just start actually by adding the input. So here, I think we should just start by bringing in the states and the imports that we need. So first off, I'm going to come down here and just bring in these guys. So let me import use router. Meanwhile, before I forget, let's make sure we make this use client. So like that. So I'll bring in use router from next navigation. Then I'll bring in use state. All right, so that's it. Now here we're going to, oh wait, I'm not even on the right. Oh, I'm so sorry, I'm not on the right place. I am working on the form. So let me save this guy and go to my form, and then I'll just bring that in. So let's add our use client here. Let's tap that, and then let's bring in the use router and the use states from next navigation and the use state from React. Okay, that works. Now the next thing we need to do is I'm just going to create an empty handle submit function. So it's just going to be an empty function like that. It's not going to do anything, or I don't know, maybe we can just put those 3 lines there. All right, so now after we've done that, let us go ahead and create the form itself. So I'm going to come inside here, and this return should just be, let's open parenthesis and open it up like this. So the first thing we want to do is I'll bring in the form like so, and just now I could have used a shard CN form with Zord validation and all of that, but I want to keep it a bit simpler, so I'm just going to use the shardcn input. All right, so I'm not using the shardcn form component. So first off, let us add this statement here to check if there is an error. So remember, we have this error variable. So here I'm just going to say that, look, if there is an error, then I want to display that error. So I'll just say where's the and then I'll just display the error variable. So do like this, and it's going to be inside a div, and we're going to style the div. So let me bring in a div. So these are the styles for the div. So it just has a border and stuff like that. So having done this, we can now come down and start working on the form itself. So for the form, let's just add a div with a class of space on the y-axis of 2. And inside of this div, we can now start bringing in the labels and inputs. So for the first one, we're just going to have a regular input, because if you come here, you see that we have just purpose and then amount, which is a number. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to duplicate this one. So I'll bring this in. So we have a label that just says purpose, and I'll import it from my label, my UI, and then we also have inputs, which I'll import from the inputs. Oh no, this should actually say at component, so that it's not properly imported. So what I want it to do is, I want it to be like let me do it once. I want it to say something like this. I'll say at /component, all right, then UI, and then label. So this is what I really want. All right, so now we've done that. I'm just going to go ahead and save, so that we can make sure that we're doing the right thing. So we have the purpose, and it looks okay. So I think what we do next is we can, sorry, my mouse is just misbehaving. So what we do next is we can bring in the next one, which is, so this next one here, I'm just going to duplicate this before I do that. And here I'm just going to bring in the amount. So we have a label for the amount, and then we have just an input also, but it has a type of number, unlike this one that has a type of text. So it has other properties. So number property, and then we have this step property as well. So that's it. Let's do the next one, which is going to be what? Let me see. So the next one is going to be the invoice link, which here we say optional, but it's actually not optional, it's required. Is it the invoice? Oh, sorry, the customer email. Okay, so let's bring in the customer email, like so. You can see here customer email, and then it has a type of email, and then the other required property. Then we're going to now bring in the link. So I'll duplicate this guy first, sorry, and then I'm just going to paste that in. Now this is basically the label and the input for the invoice link, and it's just pointing to the invoice query.invoice link. Then what do we have next? We have the status. Now this status is going to be a select field. So I will come here, duplicate this one first. Let me format these guys, okay, and then I'll just bring this in. Now this is what status label, and then it just has the select field with the value of status and the on value change of set status. So what I need to do is I need to import all of these guys. Okay, so for some reason I'm not getting that my at component. So but maybe let me just do it like this first for now. And UI select value, select like so. All right, so I've imported everything that we need here. Let me save it and see if it actually works. So you see here we have the status, and it has the 3 values: paid, overdue, and pending. So I think the last thing we need to add is the, sorry, after status is the date. All right, that's the last thing we need to add. So I'm also going to bring that in. Come here, go to invoice form, and maybe let me do like this first. and bring in. So basically it's just an input with a type of date, and it's just going to have this default value of invoice query.date, or else it will have the current date. So that's why I say new date invoice.newdate. Sorry, not the current date, rather we're just converting the date to ISO string, right? That's basically what we just did. So we said if there's a date, then convert to ISO string, else just don't show anything. So that's it we did here. It's just a ternary operator. So what do we have now? So finally we now have this create invoice button and a cancel button that basically just goes back to the invoice page. So that's basically what we're going to do next. We're going to bring that in, and it's just going to have a different style. So I'll come here and I'll remove this one and bring in the button, because it's going to have a different style. So basically what we have here is we have the button, and this one basically is just to trigger the submit. Then after that we have the cancel button, which basically just goes back to the previous page, which any page you're coming from before. So I'll just do like this, import the button, and then I'm going to save. So let's come back here and let's see. So wonderful. So we have the everything set up. Let me refresh the page, and everything works just as it should. Now, like I said, I want my import statements to be like this. Control C. So all of these import statements here, I'm just going to do like this and just paste that in so that it's consistent. The reason why I do this is because if I move this entire file to another location, it doesn't break any part of my application, because a relative import. So now that we've done that, I think we can proceed to now work on the handle submit function, which is like the main thing. Now, but before we create the handle submit function, we need to create the server actions that will be triggered when we submit our form. So for that, I'm going to do that in the next video. All right, I'll see you in the next one then. All right, welcome back, guys. So now let's go ahead and create the server actions that will handle the invoices. So inside of my source folder, this one, I'm going to create a new folder which I'll call actions, like so, and then I'll create a new file which I'll call invoice actions.js. So here, anytime you want to create a server action, you need to put use server at the top. So you need to define that there. Okay, so now let's go ahead. So first off, like I said, we want to create a function to create an invoice. So I'll just bring this in like this, right? This is create an invoice, and it's receiving an argument which is the form data. So I would like to destructure the properties in the form data like so. Okay, so now these are the properties that the form data is supposed to have. So purpose, amount, and the rest of them. All right, now let's do a try catch block. So I'll just say try catch. In my catch, well, I just want to send the error back to the front end in the catch part of the function. So here I'm just going to come in here and sort that out first by saying return. You can log it to the console to see it first, but here I'm just going to say return, and then let's just say success property and set that to false, and then I'm just going to say the error to be error message. All right, so but if in a situation where there is no message property, maybe you can say error message or something went wrong, so that works. Now let's now come to the try part, which is the main part of the application. So in my try part, remember we're using Prisma, so you have to bring in Prisma. So I'll come here at the top here, and then I'll bring in Prisma. Then I'll come here in my try block and say that first of all, there are some things we want to do. For example, we are going to verify the email of the customer. So let's just say verify customer email, but we don't have any function for that yet. So let's just hold on with that. So I'm just going to go ahead and create the what's it called, the invoice. So I'll say const an invoice, EOICE. Okay, so I think this actually works. Okay, let's tap that. So basically here I'm just saying const invoice, and then I say await prisma.invoice.create, and then I'm passing this data property, and then I'm just sending in the purpose, the amount. So for the amount, just to ensure that it's a number, I'm going to say pass float, and then I'm just going to pass the amount inside. Then the customer email, that's also going to be customer email, the invoice link, the status. So the status is going to be sent, but I'm just going to say status or pending, just if for any reason there's no status. And then for the due date, I'm going to say new date, and then I'll pass the due date as into it. All right, so you see we've created the function to create an invoice, but there are still other things we need to do, and that is this invoice link. We need to modify it. So we need to modify the invoice link. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to construct a Stripe link. So I'll say const Stripe link, and now this Stripe link is going to be equal to, so we're going to start by getting the invoice link. All right, now I'm going to append, like I could use ternary operator, right? But I'll just do the appending here. Sorry, I mean I could use the string. What's the name of that string? I can't remember. So here I'll just say I want to append the email. So I'll say pre-filled email underscore email, and then I'm just going to append it with the customer email. So that's it. So here I'll copy this, and then I'll replace this invoice link with the Stripe link. You see now, very easy. So let's try and create an invoice and see if it works. Now, after we create the invoice, however, we need to revalidate the invoices page. So here I'm just going to say revalidate path, and then I'll just put the invoices page. So we need to import the revalidate path from Nextcache. Then also we need to also revalidate the single invoice page. So here I'm just going to say backticks and then invoices /ID. All right. So now that we've done that, I can go ahead and save, and then let's go back to our form. So inside the form now, we are now going to call that function to create the, or you know what, since I'm already here, let me actually create the function to update. No, let me just create the function to update the what's it called, to update an invoice. So I will just like duplicate this guy like so, and then I'll just duplicate it and just make some quick changes. So this one was we'll just change this to say update invoice. And what are we doing here? So there are just a few modifications we're going to make. In this one here, we're going to scroll down to the update invoice, and then inside of this prisma.invoice dot, we're not going to change this to update, right? Then hold on, then I'll come here and say where. So you want to now give it some further instructions. So I'll say where, and then I'm just interested in the ID. So I'll say where the ID, aha, and then let's just do like this, comma. So format it properly. Now inside of this guy, we inside of this update invoice function, we're going to pass the ID property first, and then the form data. So this is as good as saying where ID is equal to ID, you get. But in JavaScript, you don't need to do the two, you can just do one. Okay, then another thing is, since we already have the invoice link, so we don't want to do any Stripe link here, we just want to do the invoice link. So invoice link, good. So that works, so I'm just going to get rid of the Stripe link here, and here we're not verifying anything. So now I have the two functions, one to create an invoice and one to update an invoice. Good. So now I think we can properly go to the form, the invoice form, and then we can create the invoice form. So that's the handle submit function rather. So I'll come down here. My scrolling in the mouse is just misbehaving. Okay, so I'll come down here in my handle submit function. So we have the handle submit, we have all these normal things, set loading to true, then set error to an empty string. So what you want to do now is you want to define the form data object. So I'll say const form data, and that's going to be equal to an object. Now this object is going to have those set of properties. Oh, it was already giving me those properties. Okay, you know what, let me just see if I can have it do that again. So all right, so I'm just going to bring in the properties, so the purpose, the amount, and the rest of them. So let's format. So the purpose excuse me, and we are basically just pointing to this invoice here. Hold on. So we are basically just pointing to the event.target.purpose and the rest of them. So basically everything here is coming from this form property, this form right here. All these values, event.target.purpose, blah blah blah, they are coming from this form property. Now in a production application, I probably would use shan cn ui form with Zod and React hook forms for validation. That's probably what I would do, but I just wanted this one to be fast. So now that we've done that, I'm going to come down here and say const results, and this is going to be, first of all, we're going to check that if there's an invoice, excuse me, what am I doing here, invoice, then I want to call the function to update. So what I'm trying to do here, I'm saying that look, if there is already an invoice property, then it means I need to update that invoice property. But if there is no invoice property, then I'm going to create a new one. So here I'm just going to bring in the function to update. So if there's an invoice, then I want to update it, else I want to create a new one. So let me format it properly. Now you need to import the update invoice property and the create invoice function, rather the server actions. So once you've done that, all you now need to do now is to check if there's a successful result or not. So I'll say if there's a successful result, then I want to go to the invoices page, else I want to set the error to the result.error and set its loading to false. So set loading to false. Perfect. So fingers crossed, we can save this file and then we can test. Don't forget, we've already added the handle submit here to the form. So I'll come here, fingers crossed. Oh, I'm having an issue. Oh, there's a mistake here, typographical error for the server action. It's supposed to be use server. I'm sure you saw it when I did it. Okay, so let's continue. So we have this guy here, and then I'm just going to try to create just a dummy. So for web design, let's just put $100 and then customer email. That's fine. Put any invoice link and set the date, and let's, fingers crossed, let's try to create an invoice. So it tells me that ID is not defined when we try to create an invoice. Okay, so I'm gonna go and check what that is, what that means. So let's come and see. So first off, when you want to troubleshoot, you first need to identify where the error is coming from. So I'm gonna come here to my else block, I think. Then I will log the error to the console. Just a simple way of, so just result.error. But just so that I know that it's the error, I'll just add a comment here and say error. Then I'll save it. So let's try to create the stuff again and see. So I'll say create, let me do F12 first. So F12, I'll clear my console and then I'll say create invoice. Okay, error is not defined. It's not giving us any other information. So but I think this ID, error ID is not defined. It's probably coming from this one where we are sending the invoice.id. Okay, so let's just take a second look at it here. What am I doing here? I said that if there's an invoice, then I want to send the invoice.id, but there's no invoice. So let's make it a bit simpler. I'm going to duplicate this entire thing and comment out 1. Then here I'm just going to say await, and then I'll call the function to create an invoice. Okay, so result is await create invoice, and that's enough. So save this guy and let's try again. And another thing you can do so that you can get your errors in the server, you can come to your actions, and in this error block you can just log it to the console too. Yeah, so that you can know exactly where the error is coming from. So I've saved it. I'll come here and create again. So this, and then I'll say create invoice. Okay, so ID is not defined. Oh, something is terribly wrong. So let me check my console and see. Okay. Doesn't look like. Oh, so I think I found the error because let me bring in my database. So in my database here, I saw that the what's it called? In my database here, I saw that the invoices were actually being created. You can see I've created it 3 times. So there's no problem with creating the invoice. The problem is with the ID invoice action. So if you come here in the what's it called, create invoice action, here you can see that we at the bottom here we are revalidating this ID, this invoices /ID, right? But there's no ID for that. So which means what we just need to do is we just needed to add the ID as an argument to that function. So instead of saying ID here, I'll just say I'll just remove this ID because we don't even need to revalidate the ID page when we are creating an invoice. So, but in this one, we update invoice function, it's important to revalidate that page as well. So that's all. That's basically all. So now what that means is that we are able to, let me create it again. Now it's going to take us to the invoice page. So this is the invoice page. Great. So now what we need to do now, we are able to create an invoice. Now what we need to do now is we need to list the invoice. Let's just list the invoice so that at least it's visible on the page. All right, that's what we're going to work on next. All right, so now we're going to build out the function to feature to list our invoices. So what I'm going to do is I think it's better to create the server actions first before we now proceed. So allow me to duplicate this guy and I'll be fast with it so that we can move. So this function now I'm going to change it to get invoices because it's plural. So get invoices. Let's remove the this thing argument here and let's just pass status. Now this me passing status here is I don't actually use the status feature, but just in case you want to get to use the just in case you want to add like a status filter in the front end, I've already implemented that for you. And I don't even know why this stuff has already been declared. Okay, so here I'm going to remove this one because we don't need it, and right here we're going to change this query here. So let me remove the entire data. Aha, now so here we want to say invoice.find many because we want to find all the invoices. So find many, and in our where here we're going to see that if there is a status, let's do it like this. Okay, let me just put it outside. So I'll put it outside. I'll say const where, and it's going to be, I'll say if there is a status, then I'm going to pass that status, else I'll just pass an empty object. So this is a potential status filter, like I said. So now I can just get rid of this. Then the next thing I'll add is I'll add the order by property. So order by property, and then I'll pass the created at and set it to descending. This is it. This is all we need to do. I am going to get rid of this one. Now there's one more thing I need to do, right? And that is I don't want this get invoices to be cached, so that when I create an invoice, then it doesn't need to, I don't need to like refresh the page and all of that. So anyway, let me just scroll up to where I import stuff, and I'm just going to import no store from next cache, and then inside here inside this get invoices function, I'm just going to call no store, like so. All right, so that's the function to get invoices, plural. Now let's take it a step further. Since we're already here, let's create the next function, which is to get a single invoice. So here I'll duplicate this function like so, and then I'll just change this to say get invoice. So I'll remove the S. Now this get invoice, I'm going to pass it just the ID. So ID property, and we're just going to change the query. So here I'm removing this one, and then I'm just going to also remove this one. All right, and here basically I'm removing this as well. So I'll just say where, here we're just going to pass the ID property. Oh, I made a mistake here. I said IS, I'm sorry, ID. So we're just going to pass the ID property, and that's it. That's our function. Well, if there is no invoice, we do want to return an error, right? So let's just maybe account for that. So I'll say if there is no invoice, then I just want to return an error that says, so return success, false, error, invoice not found. So that works. Then while we're here, I think it makes sense for us to just create the other functions. So I'm going to create the function to delete an invoice. So this will not be invoice.findMany. This will be invoice.findUnique. So find unique, IQUE. I hope I can spell. Okay, so let's format our code, and then let's duplicate it and create a function to delete an invoice. So I'll do like this, and then I would expand that. So here, this is also going to get the ID. So just change this to delete invoice, and then this will now be invoice.delete. All right, and we're going to delete with the ID. Okay, I'm going to remove this one. Maybe this one you probably need to revalidate path. So revalidate path and revalidate the invoices path. So that's our function to delete. Probably we just want to return, there's no data, so just return success true, and that's it. All right, then finally we also want to be able to mark an invoice as paid. So for example, we can manually set an invoice to paid by just saying mark as, oh sorry, this is the opposite, right? But we can say mark as paid, supposing it was pending. So I'm going to also duplicate this one. So I just wanted us to create all the server actions that we need, so that once we go to the front end, so the name of this function is going to be mark as paid. All right, and it's going to take the ID property. So here we want to say invoice.update because we're actually updating. Then we want to say where ID. Then here you're going to pass the data property or the data object. All right, now in the data object we want to, yes, obviously we're going to update the paid at, but first we need to update the status, status, and then I'm just going to update it and set it to paid. All right, now I think it makes sense to revalidate the ID, because, so let me do like this and say revalidate and an invoice /ID. So now I think let's just duplicate this one and just create one more server action, which we're going to call mark as pending. So where I think this is the last one. So this is going to be mark as what? Pending. So it's going to take the ID. The only thing we're changing here is the text. So change it to pending, and that's it. So now we're good to go. I think we can save. And then the next one, we are going to now start implementing the front end side of things, which is how I build all of my courses. All right, I'll see you in the next one. All right, welcome back, guys. Now let's create the components that we need. So inside of my invoice, I'm going to create two components. The first is going to be invoice list.jsx, right? And then the next one is going to be invoice details. Invoice details.jsx. All right, so that works. So let me just put something there so that it's not empty. Okay, RFC. All right, so that works. And let us go to the app. We already have the list invoice page, which is this invoices and page.jsx. So all we just need to do is to just populate it with stuff. So for now, I'm just going to, if you look at the finished project, you see that we have this number of invoices and then this text, this button, before we now have the table. So I'm just going to come here and let us call this, we can leave it as pages, but here we need to fetch, so const. So first off, we need to make this guy an asynchronous page. So just come here and add async in the front. All right, then we need to now fetch the invoices. So here I'm just going to say const result, and that's going to be equal to await, what's the function, get invoices. All right, so that's the function that we need. And once we've done that, we can now say const invoices, and invoices is just going to be equal to if we're going to do an if statement. So we'll say if result dot success, then we want to say result dot data, which means that there's a data that accompanies it, else we're just going to make it an empty array. Okay, so having done that, in our div here we need to, okay, so first off I'm going to bring in this class. So just load that, so just regular normal classes, and then I'm going to bring in, so there's no need to actually just reinvent the wheel. Let me just do like this, and then I'm just going to bring in the text and the button. So here, let's bring in the button. All right, so basically we're just saying there's a h4 that says invoices.length, and so number of invoices, and then there's a link to create a new invoice. So having done that, we now need to come down here and bring in our invoice list. So invoice list, this one, and this invoice list is going to, let me close it, is going to have a prop. I'll call it initial invoice or invoices, and then I'm just going to pass the invoice there. So basically we're good to go. I just need to go ahead and save this guy and let's see what it looks like. And so I don't think I imported it, did I? So I didn't import this get invoices, so let's import it from actions and save. All right, so let the page refresh. Aha, so you see now we have 4 invoices and then this button to create invoice. Now this shardcn button, I don't know what they did in the new version of shardcn, but the button doesn't have cursor pointer class by default, so I usually like to add it myself. So control P, button rather. So that's the shardcn UI button, and then you can just add cursor pointer, and that's it. If you put on the button now, it's going to make pointing effect. So now we need to come to our invoice list. Since we've done this one, we need to come to our invoice list and work on it. So I'll come here to the invoice list, and basically the first thing we need to do is we need to catch the prop. So I'll come here and catch the initial invoices prop, okay, so initial invoices, and then we're just going to start. So first off, what do we have in the finished project? So basically we just have a table that shows, but the table has a lot going on because it has all of this data. Then it has this, drop down menu that, you from there you can view the invoices, you can edit, you can mark as pending, and you can even delete the invoices. So that's a lot. Okay. So first off, let's bring in our states that we need. So I'll copy this guy and then I'll just come here and bring in the states that we need. So let's format. So right here, you can see we have the invoices state, and we pass this initial invoices to it. Then we have the states that are affecting other things like deleting an invoice and opening a delete dialog box. Perfect. Now, let us create some functions before we, proceed. And the first function I want to create is to get all invoices. So I'll just bring it in. Basically, I'm just repeating, the function we created here in the page, this one, I'm just repeating the same thing here to get all the invoices. So make sure you import that. Then next, we're going to create the function to delete. And so I'll come here, I'll say, no, I'll call the function handle delete. You know what? Let me just bring it in. So const handle delete, and it's going to be an asynchronous function. Yeah, so something like this. Wonderful. So I will say import it first. Now there are actually two states. If result.success, this one now, maybe we don't need to, well, we can just leave it like this, but maybe we really don't need to like reload the page and try and get the invoices again. We can just use the states. So I'll just say set invoices. Aha. So here we're just going to say invoice.filter, and then I'll just get the invoice.id that is not equal to this ID that we deleted. So now I'm not even fetching again. So having done that, the next thing I'll just do is I'll just do toast.success. All right, and I'll just say invoice deleted successfully. Okay, so but what if something went wrong with the process? Well, that's where we'll now add an else block where I'll now say toast.error, and I'll just say, maybe I'll first say failed to delete invoice. Right, then so let's just say failed to delete invoice, and then I'm just going to append that with whatever error I get. So once I do this, then the next thing I want to do is I'll come out of here, and then I'll say set delete dialog open, and then I'll just make it false, and then I'll set invoice to delete to also null. So that's what I'm going to do here. So these are functions to handle the deletes. Then before we handle the delete, we need to create a function to confirm delete, and basically this one is very short, so I can just bring it in. So come here, and this is the function to confirm delete. So basically, before we delete something, we're going to set invoice to delete to the ID, and then we're going to open the delete dialog. So those are the things we need. So we're done with the delete feature. So what we need to do next is we need to mark we need to add the function to mark an invoice as paid. Now, because we've already gone through this, well, we can just do that quickly. So here I'm just going to do like this. So this is going to set an invoice as paid. Essentially, we are just using this function mark as paid. So I'm importing it, and if we're able to successfully do that, then I would throw a success notification, and then I would get all invoices. Else I'll just throw a failure notification. Very simple. Then the next thing is to mark as pending. So that's also going to be very similar to what we just did. So to mark as pending, we're just going to use the function mark as pending. So make sure you import that, and then that's it. So if you look at this status here, currently is blue, but when you just add a new invoice, it's going to be gray. So That's because we have a function that checks the status and assigns it a what's it called, what do they call that, a variant. It's a badge. So I'll just bring in that function. Look at it, it's get status variant, and basically when it's paid we set it to default, when it's overdue we set it to destructive, and just normally we set it to secondary. So that's it. Then let me you see, we're bringing in all the functions first, then finally we're going to have a function to format the currency. So it's just going to append the US dollar in front of the currency. Do we really need that function? I don't think we do, but anyway, so let's just add the function to format a date instead. So I'll just bring in this function here, and it's just going to say format date. So it's going to take the date that we get from Postgresql, and it's just going to format it into something that makes sense. All right, so the first thing we want to do now is, when there is no invoice, we want to be able to like display something that is bold enough and tell the user to create an invoice. So let me show you how we're going to do that. I'm going to say that if invoice.length is equal to 0, so our JSX is supposed to come here, so we're supposed to return something like so. Now basically we're just going to use the card. So this one I'm not going to have to type it one by one. I'll just bring it in and then we'll look at it. So basically we just have a card which I'm going to import. When I'm importing from a component, it doesn't import it the way I want, but it's okay. So import the card header, import the card title, and these are all shard CN components, by the way, just in case you didn't know, but I'll be surprised if you didn't know. So import the button, import the link, import this icon from Lucid React. So basically we just have a card and it has a title, a description, and what is more important is this button with a link that goes to invoices/new. That's it. So I don't expect it to, let me save it. I don't expect it to show because we do have some invoices. Okay, so I don't think I imported useState, so let me quickly import it. useState, and since we're doing this, needs to be a client component since we're using useState. Okay, so save it, and that should get rid of the error. Invoice list. Are you kidding me? I didn't import invoice list. Wow, interesting. How did I forget? I imported it. So what did it say is the problem exactly? Invoice is not defined. Invoices. Hold on, let me see. What? Initial invoices. I'm not quite clear what's going on here. This is coming from invoices page.jsx, and it says invoice is not defined. Okay, I'm not, you know, it's very easy if you just search for invoice. So let me just do control find and invoice. So there are 8 instances of invoice. Invoices.length, and here we are calling invoices. I don't seem to see where that is coming from. Let me just take a second look. Okay, so I found it here. It's supposed to be invoices, all right, not invoice. So I'll go ahead and save that, and that should get rid of the error. So the page has refreshed. Like I said, we're not going to see anything, but if I come here and say if is greater than 0 and I save that, then you're going to see that we're going to get this box. So this is just the box, the card to create an invoice. It shows up when there is no invoice. So, but of course we need to revert that. Okay, so now that we've done that, the next thing we need to do now is to now create the table for the invoice. All right, so for the table, basically let us first wrap, hold on, let me just do like this, Ctrl X. So let's wrap it around like this and just put it inside. Aha. So I'm just going to open this guy up. Now we're going to give this div a class name, rounded and bordered. Then the first thing we want to do is we want to create a table, and this table is going to be a shard cn table, which we've already installed. So I'm importing it from UI table, and the table is going to have the table header and the table body. So that we save some time, I'm going to bring in the table header. So this is what the table header looks like, and let's import it one after the other. Table head. Aha. So basically the table head, let me save it and show you so that you see what we're doing. So basically it's just this stuff you see here, the serial number, the purpose, and the other properties. Good. Next, we're going to have the table body. So after the table header, which I'm formatting, we're going to come below and we're going to have the table body. Tap that, and inside the table body we're now going to bring in like the properties and all of that should be under all of these table heads. So for first you need to map through the invoices. So invoices.map, and let's do like this 1 2. So we're going to have an invoice and an index, and then it's just going to open up like that. Now here we want to have a table row. Let's tap that as well. This table row, we're going to pass it a key property, and for the key property you can either pass the invoice.id or the index, whichever one works for you, but the invoice ID is also unique. Now the first here we're not going to have table cells, and something is wrong. Table body, why is the table body behaving is not defined? Oh, I've not imported it, so nothing is wrong. So import the table body. So here we're just going to pass the table row. All right, so table row, and then we're just going to pass the properties that should, you know, all these properties one by one. So for the serial number, I'm just going to say hash, and then I would do my my curly braces and say index, which is 0 base. So I'll say index plus 1 and save that. Here you should now see that we now have 1 2 3 and 4. All right, so now I think it makes sense to, because you see they are close together like this, I think it makes sense to space them out. So let's add some styling to our, you know, our stuff. So here so we have the table body, and we didn't even add styling before. So table row, okay, so maybe for this first one I'm just going to give the table row a class name of font medium. All right, no, this table row I just made a mistake. Table row, this should be table cell. All right, it's not table row, table cell. Aha, so that's what I wanted to do. That's why it was looking confusing for me. So let's look at it here. Okay, so it's a lot better. I can see table cell makes it look a lot better. Great. So now after the first table cell, what next do we have? We have the purpose. So I think I can just duplicate this table cell and then just clean it up a bit. So do like this. I'm removing this class name, and then inside here I just want to say invoice.purpose. So that works. Then I will duplicate it again, and then I'll just say invoice.customer email. Now this one I'm going to give it a class name of text muted. Text muted foreground. So text hyphen muted and then hyphen foreground. Yeah. Then what else do we have? Let's format it. After that we have the amount. So for the amount, let me just duplicate this one, like so. Sorry. And here I'm just going to say invoice.amount. Now, the reason why I say we didn't need to format the currency is that you can just add your $sign in front of it, and that should work. Then what else do we have? So after the invoice, we have the after the amount, we have the status. So I'll just say, okay, we'll just create another table cell. Now, instead of just having the status and all of that, we're going to have it inside a badge. So we'll do a badge, and let's import the badge from the UI. And then for the badge, we're going to give it a variant. Now this variant is going to now be dynamic. So inside we're going to say, call the get status variant and pass it the invoice status. All right, so inside the badge we'll now still say we want to invoice.status. So that's for the badge. Then I think last but not the least, we have the, there's the due date, and then there's the actions. So for the due date, let's come down here. We're going to create another table cell. I think I'll just type it out myself, so that's table cell. And then for this one, we're just going to format the date. So format date, and then I'll just pass it the invoice.due date. Let me save it for now and let's see what we have. Hopefully we don't. Okay, so everything is coming together nicely. So I think the last thing we need to do is to add the actions drop down menu, so that when you click on those 3 dots, it now shows you all the actions tab. All right, so I'll come down here, and then I will, after this table cell, I'll create another cell. Right, now this cell here, we're going to give it a class name of text right, so that it appends to the right. So text -right, and the drop down is actually going to be a bit like, it's going to be somewhat complex, and you can just check shardcn. Actually, they are all shardcn components I'm using right here, but let's just do it, one by one. So first off, I'll say drop down menu. So we tap that and we import it. Drop down menu from UI. Yeah, that works. Now this drop down menu, first off, we need to add these 3 dots. So it's, the 3 dots is basically just what's it called? It's basically just an icon, a Lucid React icon. So just to save time, I'll just be bringing in this stuff in bulk, so that I don't have to type something that you're going to copy from shardcn anyway. So I'll bring this first one in. So what we have here, let me format it, is we have a drop down menu trigger. We brought in a drop down menu trigger, which has this as child prop, and then inside of it we brought in a button, and the button has this span, and this span is for screen readers. So it's not going to show on a regular, like, what's it called? It's not going to show on the regular browser. It's for screen readers. So I'll import this component from Lucid React, and then I'm just going to save. What that will do is that it will just show you 3 dots, right? These 3 dots now, they are not opening, they are not doing anything. So we're going to now come here, and we're now going to bring in the drop down menu content. That's what we're going to bring in. So here I'll come, and I'll just say after this drop down trigger, I'll come and bring in this one. Let's make sure we import it. All right, so we're making progress, I think. So let's come here. So the first thing we have is we have this text, and then we now have the menu items. It works fine. So let me bring in the text first, and then we're just going to bring in the other items. So I'll come here, and then I'll just slot that in. So let's format it, and then let's see what we have. All right, like I told you, all these stuffs, they are from shard cn UI, so it's not like I'm doing anything special. So this first one here is just the drop down menu label. It says actions. Then the first menu is the drop down menu, and basically it's just the link that says view details. It's going to invoices / and then the invoice ID. That's it basically. If I save this guy and come here, you see that we just have one of them. So let's go ahead and bring in the other one. The other one says edit. So we'll come here after this first drop down menu that ends here. We're going to bring in another menu, and basically this menu just says edit from Lucid React. So you can see that it's linking to invoices / invoice ID / edit. So we're going to create that. The next one, let's see what we have. So after the edit, we have this separator and then this mark as pending. So I'm going to bring in both. It's either mark as pending or mark as paid. So let's just bring in all of that once and for all. So drop down menu separator and both. So I'll come here after this drop down menu. Let me just give 2 space, and then I'm just going to say, all right, so let's look at what we have. So basically I brought in a drop down menu separator like so, and then I check and say if invoice status is equal to paid, is not equal to paid rather, which means it's pending, then I want to show this menu that says mark as paid. And basically when I click on it, I'm calling the function to handle mark paid. So let's import the icon. Then I'm saying that if invoice is not equal to paid, then I want to set it to mark as pending. So let's also import the clock from Lucid React and save. Then last but not the least is the function to, the button to delete. All right. So for that, I'm going to come here, give some space, and basically I just brought in a drop down menu separator and another drop down menu item. And this item is basically just calling the confirm delete function and passing the invoice ID as an argument. So if I come here, I'll import this trash2 from Lucid React and then I'll save. So now if I come to the current project I'm working on and I click here, you're going to see that we now have all of them here. Now, which one do you think we can test? Well, first let's try to delete something. So I'll say delete this one. And you see that we don't get anything. We only, because we've not built the modal that deletes stuff. So we're going to come outside of the first div. So this is the only div, right? We're going to come outside of this div and we're going to bring in a dialog, an alert dialog. Now this alert dialog is basically it's also a shard cn component, by the way. So let me just bring it in, slot it in, and we explain. So you can see here it's an alert dialog and it's pointing to the open dialog, the delete dialog modal, which is a state that we created up there. Let me import, you know what, I don't want to do this one after the other, so let me just bring in the entire dialog import once and for all. So let me scroll up and slot it in somewhere, maybe after this one. So that's everything we need for the dialog. I'm not using the dialog trigger, so I'll get rid of it. All right, so go ahead and save. And you see here we have the dialog because we clicked on this guy before. Let me cancel it and so that I can explain. So in my alert dialog, basically we just have this alert dialog and it has a title, a description, and the important thing here is the call to action button. So we have the alert dialog cancel, which is this, and then the alert dialog action. Basically we just calls a function, and this function here basically just calls the function to handle delete, and then it just passes the invoice to delete. So basically what happens is that when you click on this button, it's going to set the ID to the invoice to delete. it's going to set that invoice ID to the state. So if you scroll up, you realize that we set some states when we're starting out. Let me go up and show you. Look at this. So this is invoice to delete, and this is the dialog state. So now let's go ahead and test. I come here, I say I want to delete something, and then I delete. Okay, voila. So it actually deletes it, but we get an error here. So let me open this error and see what we're having. It says toast is not defined. Okay, that works. That makes sense because we actually did not import toast. So let's import toast from Sona. So I'll come here to where we have toast, and it's also a shard CN component. So import toast from Sona, and that's it. So what this means now is that we can go ahead and delete all the excess things we've added before. So that's deleted. Let's delete this one. That's also deleted. Perfect. So now we need to still work on the create invoice form, because yes, we can create an invoice, but when we create an invoice, we want to be able to validate the email, and we also want to be able to send the email to the customer that we put their email here. So we're going to do that in the next video. All right, I'll see you then. All right, so now let's go ahead and add the other functionalities that will handle the email and stuff. So just like I created the invoice action, I'm going to come here and create the email action. So I'll come here and say email actions.js. And for us to do this, let's add our use server. And for us to do this, we're going to need to install the mail API page. So I'll come here and say npm. I think I already have it somewhere in my URL. So this is it right here. So this is it right here. So it's going to work for any JavaScript Node.js based system. Clicking this thing, but I'm not seeing. Okay, let me just copy it. So you're gonna come here, you're going to come to the other terminal and paste that in. So npm install mailapi dev, hit enter on that. So the installation is complete. So now we can go ahead, and if you look at the documentation, it's pretty much straightforward. So first off, you need to import mailapi dev, and then you initialize your API key. So let me just get rid of this comment. All right, so mailapi dev, and then mailapi is also new mailapi dev, and then you just point your mailapi key. So that's it. Aha. So the first thing we want to do is we want to create the function to send an email. So I'll say send email, and it's just going to be const. And okay, so we need to export it. So export so const, and what am I doing? If I can just type, man. So it's going to be send email, and like so. Now here we're just going to change this property here to email data to keep things simple. All right, now let's do our try catch block. Just like I usually like to do, I like to handle the catch block first. So here I'm just going to say that if, let me close this guy, if there's an error, well, I just want to return success false and then return the error message. So that's it. So in my try block, well, let's look at the npm package. So when we want to send an email, you can see here. So this is just an example of how you can send a simple transactional email, right? So data awaits mailapi.email.send, right? So you can actually just copy this line here and just put it here. You can see. So but instead of putting the parameters here, so the to, from, and all of that, I'm just going to point the email data. Just say email data. All right. So another thing you can do aside this guy here, you can actually just go to the documentation page, which okay, for some reason it's not linked here, But if you go to the mailapi.dev, you can just see their documentation. And so this is their documentation. Everything is here. So they even have a video. So you can come to send email, and everything is just, look at all the parameters that you need for sending. You can send either with just a regular message, or you can send with a template, but I'll show you all of that. So we said here we do mailapi.email.send, and then we'll just handle when there's an error and when there is no error. So I'll come down here and say, if there is an error, wrap this guy, there's an error, then I just want to send something. So return false, and then just send the error message. I think this works. Okay. Then what if there is no error? Then if there's no error, you just want to return I'll just say return success and return the data. So that's it. So this is how simple it is for you to send email with mailapi dev. So that's the first. Now what I also want to do is I want to create a function to verify an email. So I'll come here, I'll do like this, I'll duplicate this one down, and then I'll just say verify email. All right, and I'll change this to verify email. So this is going to verify if an email actually exists or not. If you come to the npm package, you're going to see the verify email side. So look at it, it's just emails.verify, then you just pass the email. So it's straightforward really. So here I'm just going to change this to email.verify, and here instead of saying email data, I'll just rename it to email. So to make sure it's clear, just pass the email here. If there's an error, it's the same thing. If there is if it's success, then you just want to return the data. Okay. So, but one thing I want to show you is I want to show you the verification parameters. So if I come here, I'll do a console.log of data. So just so that you can see what it is. So let me just say verify email or email verification. Verified, something like that. Okay. So I think for now, I'll just stop with these two functions, yeah. And then I'll just proceed. So here I'll come to my invoice actions. Now that I've created the two functions, I'll come to the create. So let's come to the create. Now, before we actually create an invoice, we want to verify it. So here I'm just going to add a comment and say verify email. Sorry. So that, excuse me. We want to verify if the email actually exists before we, send the email. So what I'll do is, I think I can put it inside the try block since it's an asynchronous function. Oh, I've already added the comments before. I forgot. So verify customer email here. And basically you just want to say, I'll say const verify, and it's going to be equal to await. So let's call the function to verify email from email actions. And we're just going to pass the customer email there. So what happens if there's an error? Well, if for some reason there's an error, you see, we can get two kinds of error here. So in the verify email, we can get this error. Maybe there's an error in any of the processes. We're going to handle that. And then we can get a data if the process is successful. In that data that we get, the email can either be valid or invalid. So we have to process that as well. But let's start with the error. So here I'll come and say if there is a verify.error, right, then I want to process it differently. So basically I'm just going to return success false and then send the error to the front. So but what if the email is processed, and all of that? So what we're going to expect is, let me see if we should have that in the documentation. So verify email API. Okay, so let me look for the so look at its success response. Now in the success response, it's going to give us back the email we verified, and this property, valid property. If the email is valid and exists, it would return this as true, and then it's just the email is valid. If it's not valid, it's going to return this as false, and then it will tell you why, what the problem is. So for example, if it's a disposable email, if it doesn't have an MX record, if it's, you know, all of that. So this is what we're interested in, the valid property. See, so if I come here, I'll just say that if verify, right, let me just add a query, if verify dot data, sorry, and then I'll add another query, I'll say dot valid. So this is if it is valid, right? So but what we want to check is if it is not valid. So if it's equal to false, then I'm just going to also return, and I'll just return that. But this time, no, I don't want to return a text. I'll return verify.data.message, verify.data. Come on now, help me type data.message, which is exactly what you can see here. It's all here in the documentation. You can see there's a message property. So that's it. Now this is what's going to help us verify our email. The next thing we want to do is, after we create this invoice, we want to be able to send the invoice as an email to the customer. Very important. So I'm going to come down here and then I'll say send email invoice. All right, so basically we just want to say await and call the send email function like so, import it, and then basically it's just going to have some properties. So what are the properties that we want to send this email with? Well, if you come to the send email documentation, you're going to see that you can either send an email like a simple text-based email or HTML inline email, or you can send email with a template. So what I want us to do is I want us to send the email with a template. So but first, let's add the regular let's just copy, like excuse me, let's copy these properties here so that it's easy to just, so I'll just come here and slot this in, and then we're just going to make some changes. So let me remove this one, verify and save. No, I don't need this flag. Reply to, okay, that's fine. All right, so let's go. So from here we're going to say invoice manager, invoice, let's say mgr. So let's just say mgr, and then I'll just leave it as that since I'm still in test mode. Then I want to send to the customer email. Then the subject is going to be, what did I call the subject? So I'm just going to append the purpose with the subject. So I'll do like this. So invoice manager mgr. So invoice manager, and then I'll append the purpose. Then this template ID, template data, and finally reply to. This reply to is not compulsory, but I mean it's good to just have it. So whatever email you want, right? So here I'm just going to say no reply at mail.mailapi.dev. So now this template ID, template data, where is it coming from? Well, you're going to go to Mail API dashboard and create a template. So instead of you creating the templates, you know, and disturbing yourself with writing code templates, just create it with the template builder. So I'll come to my Mail API dashboard. You can see invoice manager.xyz, and then I'm just going to click on templates. So here in templates, I already have a template that I've created. So, but let me show you how to create a template. So we can say create template. Now you can either just tell AI what you want to create, like just say create an invoice template, invoice email template. So it's just going to just give you something, just a quick template, and then you can now maybe add or remove what you don't want from it and stuff like that. But it takes a couple of seconds for it to create it. And just like that, it has created a template for us. So if you scroll down, you just see it's a very simple template. So but for me, I really would just maybe make some changes and all of that. So to make some changes, you can just use this template editor. So for example, this guy here is just a regular text. So maybe for example, I will just come here and edit it. There are some things I want the template to have, and I maybe want it to be a bit more structured. So I'll do like this. I'll just remove this and maybe say purpose, and then I'll just do like, now if you want to add a variable, you're just going to do double curly braces and then just put whatever. So I'll say purpose. This is going to be like the first variable. So that's it. Then maybe this invoice, I will just remove this company name because so just remove this invoice. Just say invoice. Maybe I'll just say invoice MGR. And then this logo, I don't have a logo, so I'm just going to delete the entire thing. I don't have a logo, so maybe I'll just make this one my logo. So the way I can do that is I can change the background to dark and just change the text color to white. So I'll just make this one my logo. So you want to add something like a text before you start listing all these things. So I'll just put a text here and move it up a bit like so. So here maybe like a normal curtsy text, thank you, maybe please find details of your invoice below. All right, then you can maybe say contact us if you have any questions. So just like that. So I already have purpose here. So what I'll just do next is I'll just duplicate it, and this is just going to change to, so we have purpose. What else do we have? So we have purpose, amount, status, and due date. So maybe I'll just put the purpose, the amount, and the due date. So you come here, you say purpose, and then this one is going to be changed to amount. And here we're just going to say amount. And then this one is going to, we're going to duplicate this one and change this one to due date. Due date. And then we're just going to use camel casing, due date. So you see, we already have 3 variables. Then for this button, I'll come here and it says invoice link. I think invoice link is actually fine. So here you maybe want to come here and make sure that you have your company name. It shouldn't be a variable. You can just put it invoice MGR. All right. So if you want to add any other thing, just feel free to add it. But I think this is fine. So we have purpose, we have amount, we have due date. If you want to add the name of the customer, you can also add that here. You can say hello and customer name. It depends on what you want to do really. So as far as I'm concerned, this is fine. So I'll just change the name here. So I'll say invoice underscore tutorial. Like you can't add space in here. It has to be one single word, tutorial. Then, oh, sorry, you can, this is not where you need to. So you can add space in here because this is just the name. So invoice tutorial. So, but here it has to be a single word. So here it's invoice tutorial, and then I'm just going to put it in my billing, and then I'll just say save. So that's it. It's a very simple template. Save. Voila. So we have that. So if you want to edit it, you can just click on edit, and then you can edit the template anyhow you want and all of that. But what am I doing here? Okay, I did the wrong one. So maybe, I don't know, maybe it makes sense to add the status also. So let me just edit it and maybe duplicate this one and say status. See now, then I'll come here and then I'll just say status. I think it's okay like this. Then save. Okay, good. So you see, that's how easy it is to create a template. Now, you can go ahead and create another template, as many templates as you want really. Let me show you how to use it. So I'll copy this ID and then I'll come to my invoice action. Let's scroll down to where we're sending. So you see, this is where we're sending the email. I'm just going to slot in the template ID. So, and then for the template data, I will just, put them one by one. So first we got the purpose, we got the invoice link, we got the status, and we got the due date. See, so these are exactly the variables here. So you can see purpose, amount, status, due date, invoice link. So purpose is simply just pointing to this purpose and the rest of them. Now, remember we created this Stripe link. So our invoice link, where is the send email? Our invoice link is going to be the Stripe link. All right. And I think that's what we need. So purpose, amount, invoice link, status, and due date. Save. Those are the two things we need. So let's go ahead and test, right? We do need to test. Make sure you import the send email. Okay, I think I imported it. Aha. So I'll come here to the project I'm currently working on and I'll try to create another invoice. So create invoice, and then, okay, so now before you send an email, right? Before you send an email, you need to, since I'm in test mode, if you come to invoice mailapi.dev and you go to your project, so if you go to your project, you can see here that I'm in testing mode. So for you to be in production mode, you need to just verify your domain. So because we're in testing mode, we can only send from this email, and then we can only receive, or we can only send to the test email we add here. So I'm going to have to add this my Gmail as a test email. I'll click add, and then it will send me a verification link which I have to verify before I can now start. I can send to this test email. So you can add, I think maybe up to 10 test email, but once you're in production, you can send from your domain and you can send to any email. So I'll come here and I'll just click on verify to verify my email, and you can see I've added the email. So if I come back here and I refresh this page, my Mail API dashboard, you're going to see that I now have Donald Z there. Good. So I can go back here and let's create an invoice. So I'm just going to say marketing consulting. I'll just say $100, and customer email. This is my test email that I've added. Just say add any invoice link and set the date, maybe just 2 days later. Now I want to add a wrong email to see if the verification works. So let's start by doing that. So I'll say create invoice. Target must be an object. Oh, okay. So perhaps there's an error somewhere. So let's check it. So I looked at the code and I'm not really seeing anything that should cause that error, except that we have this guy here. We removed this guy. So let's actually just uncomment this one. Then I also noticed that my styles, there's a typographical spelling error here. So I'm just going to correct everything. But I finally figured out that the error is coming from my email action, and specifically the verify action. Just like we have in the send email, the send email is receiving this email data, right? But I didn't do it correctly. Okay, it's correct because it's an object, but so either you come here in the verify email and you make this an object because it's just receiving it directly. So here I'm just going to open an object and then I'll say email. All right, so that's because from this invoice action, we're just sending the customer email directly. So that's why it has to be an object. So I'm just going to go ahead and save, and let's try to verify again. So free web design, and I'm going to click on create invoice, and as you can see, it's verifying the email, and then it has created it. So it's this last one here, although it's the same name. So now let's actually check if we are getting that email. I'll come back here and you can see we have an email from Invoice Manager just now for web design. If you open that email, you're going to realize that, okay, so it's everything we did. 1, 2, 3, the status is pending and this is the due date. So which means the verification and the sending email is working. Good. So we are almost ready and good to go. There's one more thing though. Let's confirm that the verification, email verification is actually working. So I will delete these ones I just created so we don't have so much. So let's delete this one and let's delete this one. Okay, so we don't have any. And then I'm just going to click on create. Let's do marketing consulting for $100 and let's put the customer email. And then I'm just going to add something that I know is wrong. So add any Stripe link there and any date. Good. Now I've made this email wrong. Let's see if we're going to be able to verify it. So I'll click on create invoice and you can see email is invalid and does not exist. So like that, let me do another test. Let me just do a test for a disposable email. And I think I'll just search for disposable email. Okay, so let's just open this one and just grab one disposable email. I will do this one. And then I will come here. Oh, sorry. I'll come here and slot that disposable email in. Then I'll just say create invoice. I just want to show you that it's actually verifying the email. It's not just that it's guessing. So you can see that email is a disposable email and it's a catch-all email. So you can see. So that's how it works. So the verification is working. The email sending is working. Now, the next thing we need to do is to create the email automation. I don't know, should we do the automation first or should we finish the application? I think we should do the automation. So let's do the automation. So for the email automation, we need to be able to add these emails that are, these invoices that are being sent. We need to be able to save this data in mailapi.dev. So let me show you. This is my mailapi project invoice manager.xyz. And if you come here, you're going to see that we have this email list and currently it's empty. So we need to be able to save that email or that data here so that we can now create an automation that will work with this data. So that's what we need to do next. And we're going to do that next. All right. All right. So now we're going to sync our, when we create an email, we're going to save that email in our mail API list. And we need to create some email functions for that. So I'm going to come to my email actions. Let me collapse this one. And I think it's easy for me to simply just copy this one. And then I'll come down here. I'll say I want to add email to mail API. And then I'm just going to bring that in. And basically, I'll just call the function name. It's going to be long add email to mail API. And it's just going to, I'll just change this one here to add. And that's it. That's all. That's all we need to do. Obviously, we need to change the message. So fail to add email. So that's, I think that's the only thing we need to do. Then since it's already here, and this thing I'm doing right here is simply here in the npm documentation and even in the docs, the official docs. So you can see when we want to add an email, you just say email.add. But here I just listed out some of the properties you can add and all of that. So let's do the other one. So the other one is going to be update email. So let me just do like this, and I will just change the name of the function to update mail API email. So here I'll say I want to update email. Update email. All right. Here we're just going to change this one to say update and send the email data. So that's it basically. And yeah, I just want to say failure to update. Right, so we're good to go. So now that we have these two functions in place, we now need to go back to our invoice action, which is this one here. And okay, so we verified the email, that works. we send an email to the customer. That also works. So here I'm just going to add I'll say add email to mail API. So you just want to call that function to add the email to mail API. All right, so let me just clear it like this and open it like this. So when you want to add an email to mail API, how do you, like, what are the properties, the parameters and all of that? So let me go to my docs. So I think from here I can just go to the dashboard and go to the docs page, and then I'll just say email list API. I just want to show you so you know where everything is. So these are the properties that you need to add, right? You can add rather. So but right now the property I'm interested in is the custom fields. Obviously you need to add the email, so you need to add the email, and then I'm going to work with the custom fields. If this was like a SaaS, then you can see it has properties for subscription status, plan, and the rest of them, churn. So but custom fields is what I'm particularly interested in. So I'll come back here, and so the first property I want to add is the email property. Just 1 second. So here I'm just going to come here and say email, and that's going to point to our customer email. So that's one. I'll add a comma, and then I'll come and say custom field. The custom fields is an object, and it can take any kind of property you want. So here I'm just going to save the purpose, the amount, the invoice link, the status, and the due date. So that's it. So let's go ahead. Let's make sure you import the function. All right, so now I'm going to save this function, and let's create another invoice. So I'll come here to my project, and let me change the title here to something else. So let me just say social media consulting. Yeah, and then I'm just going to use that, and let's create. All things being equal, it should create successfully. Oh, I'm creating with the disposable email, so it's not going to work. I need to put like the email I added, the test email I added. All right, so it has created this one, social media, blah blah blah. Now let us actually go back to our dashboard, the email API dashboard. So go to the project, invoice manager tutorial, and come to your email list. So you see here that I have this Donald Z email saved, and if you hover on it, you're going to see the properties. So you can see pending, due date, the invoice link, and the purpose and the amount. So that works perfect. So now that we've done that, the next thing we need to do is we need to now create the functions for the other parts of the application. So for example, like the features for the other part, like to edit, to mark as paid, and all of that. So we can just do that right here. All right. All right, welcome back, guys. So let's work on the feature as it comes. So we're going to work on first to view, then to edit. So for the view feature, I think we already have the required components for that. Allow me to close the parts of the application we're not using for now. So we're going to have this ID, and inside of this ID we have this page. So it's in this page that we're going to create the component to view. So we're going to call this export default function. Let's just rename it to invoice details page, and then we're just going to okay, so we're going to get out the params. So right here I'll do like this, my curly braces, and then I'll just say params. So I'll come down and destructure the ID. So the ID I'm destructuring is this ID here. So I'll say const ID, and that's going to be equal to params. Then I will now fetch the invoice. So result, and that's going to be, so let me get the invoice. All right, make sure you import that with the ID. So Well, if for any reason there is no result, or sorry, maybe there is result of success is equal to false, then what I'll just do here is I'll just call not found. So not found, like so. Very good. So not found is from next navigation. So you can create a 404 page, so that, or whatever kind of page you want to represent this particular not found. But let's just proceed. So, but what if you get the data, which is the likely thing? Well, I'm just going to bring in the invoice details, this one. So let's, no, is it invoice details page? No, just invoice details. I'm importing the same thing. I think we have invoice details. Let's check. Invoice details, yes, from components, invoice and stuff. So for the invoice details, I'm going to pass the result.data to it, and then I'll just go ahead and save. So which means what we need to do next is to now work on this invoice details. Yes. Okay. So the invoice details page, we're going to catch the prop, and basically just the invoice we want to catch. And so let me open the invoice details page so that you can have an idea of what we're trying to achieve. So basically, did I just click on view and nothing happened? Yeah, I need to refresh the page. So view, yeah. So basically we just have this invoice ID and then the status, and then we have the information about the invoice just displayed here. Then at the bottom we have this button and then back. So it's pretty straightforward. So let me come here and just bring in the router first, and it's from next navigation. Meanwhile, let's not forget to do use clients. Okay, so there are some functions that we want to be in place when we create this page. For example, if we want to delete an invoice, that function has to be in place. And remember, we already have that function in this page here. So this one that says delete. So there's no need to reinvent the wheel and type what we already have. Let's just bring it in. So basically, I'm just going to come down here and then I'll say handle delete. So look at it right here. It's just basically, we're just throwing a confirmation, and then we're calling the delete invoice function and passing it the invoice.id as an argument. All right. If there is a success, if it's successfully deleted, we just go back to the invoice page. So that's it basically. Then from this page also, we can actually mark an invoice as paid or set it back to pending. So these are also functions that we have before, that we've created before. So I'm also just going to bring them in. So I'll come here and then I'll just scroll down. You can see, so this is handle mark paid and handle mark pending. So basically we're just calling the function to mark as paid and mark as pending. Now don't forget to import these server actions. So import this one, import this as well, and this one as well. So that's it. All right, then for this guy here, you can see the status is green. So we have a function that actually gets the status color. And these things I'm showing you, we've actually used them in the invoice list. If I come here and I go to the invoice list, you see handle mark paid, handle mark pending, get status. So we have basically created these things before. So that's why I'm not bothering to write them again. So we're just repeating the same functions here. So get status color, and I think that's about it. So now we can now come to the body and create the body of the. Okay, where did I put get status color? Oh, okay, I put it in between. So let me do Ctrl Z and let me put it at the bottom. All right, so here I'm going to remove this guy so that we can start. So first off, let's give this one a class name, and I'm just going to give it a max width of, let's just do 3XL, and then we're just going to bring in the other related components. So what's the first thing we have here? Well, we have this invoice ID, and then we have this status. So let me just bring it in as like a block, since like there's no need to bring it in separately. So first off, I'm going to put a div, and this div basically is just going to have the white background, and just like the card kind of. I could have easily used a card, but it's okay. So it's just going to be like a card kind of effect. So now after that div, let's put the first part, which is the header. So basically in this header here, we just have a title, so the invoice and the number of the invoice, that's the ID, and then we also show the status of the invoice. So you can see here we're doing the get status color, and we're passing it the status as an argument. If you save this file, you should see that we now have, okay, let me open the invoice. So it's rendering. Okay, so there's something wrong here. It's telling me page not found. So let me go back and refresh that page and make sure that I do have an invoice. So what's going on? Okay, so I'm not exactly sure. Okay, it's a hydration error. So I figured the problem is from the invoice page, this invoice details page itself. So this one is supposed to say, it's supposed to be an asynchronous function, async, and here therefore we're going to say await params, and also here we're going to say await. So I just missed the async await, and I think that should solve our problem. So I'm going to refresh this page, and now you can see we have this invoice and pending. Another thing is this should actually be like a card, so it shouldn't occupy the entire width of the page. So let me take a second look at that as well. So for that, I'm just going to add some styles to this div. So let's just put, so container mx auto, and then I add some padding around it, and I think that should fix up the, okay, so you see it has reduced it considerably. Okay, so let us come back to the invoice details page and finish up. So what do we have next after this header? Well, so after this first area here, I'm going to come down and bring in another div. Now this div is going to contain a lot of the content or the components you see in the finished project. So this guy is here. So we just do a div with a padding and some space in between it. So first off, let's bring the first one, which is going to be what? So it's going to be this purpose, and then it's going to state out the purpose. So right here we have purpose, and then we have invoice.purpose. All right, then we're going to bring in the amount. So let me just come down here. You know what, let me expand this guy. Good. So I'm going to come down here, bring in the amount. So you're just going to say amount, and we're going to put the amount here. Let me see if I brought in this control find. So I didn't bring in any format currency, so let me remove this one and this two, and then here I'm just going to add a $sign, so just to make things simple. Then I'm going to bring in the customer email. So let's come here and bring in customer email. So you see here we have customer email, and then we have the invoice.customer email. Then we need to bring in the invoice link. So invoice link is going to be a bit so I'll come down here, and okay, you know what, since we're always going to have the invoice link, right, let me just bring it in like this. So I'll come here and bring in the invoice link. So we have just the label with the invoice link, and then we have a link tag, sorry, an a tag that just goes to the invoice.invoice link. So it's as simple as that. Then you know what, let me save this one and just see where we are at. So you can see we have the invoice link. So after the invoice link, basically we just have the due date and the dates the payment was made, and then created that and updated that. So I think this one we can just I don't know, let's just bring it one after the other so it's not too much. So I'll do like this, and it's going to be in like a grid container, a grid div. So grid, I told you, so grid calls 2. So the first column is going to have the due date. You can see, let me make sure I have this format date brought in. Okay, I don't think I have format date, so let me bring in the format date. You know what, we can even just bring it from the invoice list. So just look for the format date, look at it right here. So in production, the functions that you use more than once or that you use frequently, you want to put them in a file so that you can call them multiple times, so you don't repeat yourself so much. So the next thing, we're just going to bring in the other one. So let me come down here and do like this and save. So created that and updated that. If you come here, then you see that we now have this. So which means the last thing we need to do is to bring in the buttons at the bottom. So something you already know how to do. So I'm just going to bring them in. So we just have 3 buttons here and this back to list here that just goes back. So I'm gonna come out of this div, right? No, not this one, the very bottom. I'm trying to figure out where it stops, you know. I've auto formatted it. So all right, so this one ends here, then we have this one that ends here, so its next one is going to come here. All right, so now let's just go up and see. So basically we just have links. Let me import it from next, is it next link now or next link? Okay, so basically this is just a link that goes to the edit invoice. We don't have edit invoice function yet, but this is what it's going to go to. Then if the invoice status is equals to paid, then we want to show a button. If the invoice status is not equal to paid, in other words, if it's pending or overdue, we want to show a button that says mark as paid, which we're calling the function to handle mark paid. And then the opposite for when it's paid, we want to say mark as pending. Then this is a button that just calls the handle delete function. You see now, we've already created that before. And let me do that again. Handle delete, so that's correct. Then this last one just goes back to invoices. So by now, if you go ahead and save, then you should just see that we have them right here. Okay, so now I can try and go back, and it takes me to invoices, and I can try and save view, and it takes me back to these guys. So the next thing we want to do now is let's work on the function to edit an invoice, or the feature to edit an invoice. All right, I'll see you in the next one then. Okay, now so let's work on the feature to edit an invoice. So I gotta come here and let's open our editor here. Now inside of this ID, we're going to create a new folder and we're going to call it edit, and I'll create a page.jsx inside of it. And instead of doing array fce, like instead of creating a starting from scratch, what I'll do is I'll just come to this new here, and then inside of this new, I think it's easier to just copy what we have here and then modify it. So I'll come to edit and paste that in there. Let's start by changing the name to, what the name did I think edit invoice page. So let's just say edit invoice page. Now inside here, we're going to get out the params, and just like we did, we'll get out the ID. So let's destructure the ID from the params. Then let us get the invoice. So get, sorry, oh, I almost made a mistake here again. This should be async. So here we'll now say await, and then let's maybe do like this, and then I'll just change this to result, and it's just going to say await get invoice. Let's just tab it. Now don't forget to import get invoice from invoice action. All right, so just like I did here, I'll just say if there is no invoice, then I'll just say page not found. Okay, then I'll change this h1 here to say edit invoice. Edit invoice. Then maybe I will put the invoice number, so hash, and then the invoice number is going to be result.data.id. All right, so let me, okay, so now in my invoice form, I'm going to pass the invoice and it's going to be result.data. Remember, if you go to the invoice, you see that we are getting the invoice, and if we come down here, you see here something is wrong. Okay, if we come down here, you see that in our handle submit, we said that if there's an invoice, then we want to update it. If there's no invoice, then we just want to create a new invoice. So that's it basically. So what I'll do now is I'll come here and try to edit an invoice. So if I say edit invoice, it's supposed to go to the form. So it's rendering. All right, so here I'm going to change this here. Maybe what I'll just do is I'll just add a text and just say edited, and then I'll say update. So fingers crossed, because we've not tested the edit function before, and as you can see, we have edited here, so which means our edit function works. All right, so far we've been able to create an invoice. We can view the invoice. We can mark the, let's see if we can mark the invoice as paid. So we can delete the invoice, definitely, we've done that before. So let me click mark as paid and see what happens. So we get an error, mark as paid, invalid, blah blah blah. Okay, so now I think we can just go and check up the mark as paid function. So I will go to, first of all, it's somewhere in the invoice list. So let me just control find mark. So this is handle mark as paid. So let's go up. I'm sure we imported it correctly, so we did import it. All right, now let's open this mark as paid function, and it's basically supposed to get the ID of the invoice and then change the status to paid. Funny enough, I didn't get to see that error. I'm not too sure. Okay, so I think the problem is with this date. This should be data. All right, so data, and then even the mark as pending should also be data. I think that's where the issue was. Okay, so let's come here and try again, and I'm just going to do mark as paid. All right, so it goes to paid, and if I do mark as pending, then it goes back to pending. Also, if I view the invoice, and right here, if I click mark as paid, then it's updated to paid, and same, it's updated back to pending. Okay, great. So now what we need to do next is we need to integrate Stripe, and then we need to sync any events that happens when a user makes payment to our data, both as on Postgres and on mailapi. Then finally, at the end of the tutorial, we are going to now create the automation so that if a user has not paid their invoice, we can set a reminder that sends after 24 hours or after 48 hours, or any kind of automation we want to that user. All right, so I'll see you in the next one then. All right, so now when the user has made payment for the invoice, we need to create a Stripe webhook that will update our database and also update our mail API list so that that user doesn't get a reminder again. So let's start by creating the webhook. So from here, I'll come to app, and inside of the app, I'll create a folder which I'm going to call API, and inside the API, we're going to create another folder which we'll call webhook, and then finally we're going to create another folder which we're going to call Stripe. So API, webhook, Stripe, and here we can now create our file which we'll call route.js. Okay, so now before you do all of this, you need to have Stripe installed on your system or on your repo. So I'll say npm install Stripe, and I'll hit enter. Okay, so while it's installing, we'll go ahead and import all the necessary stuff that we need for this to work. So I'll come here and then I'll just import them. So I'm importing next response, I'm importing Stripe, which we are installing currently, and I'm importing Prisma. Okay, now remember we have our remember we have our .env where you're supposed to have your Stripe PK, which stands for publishable key, your Stripe secrets, and your Stripe webhook. You remember we created it in the beginning of the video. So having that in mind, let's go ahead and initialize some of these keys. So I'm going to come down here and then I'll initialize my Stripe and my webhook secret. Excuse me. So basically I'm just pointing to the Stripe secrets key and the Stripe webhook. All right. So having done that, let us now create the function to process the webhook response. So I'll do like this, and then I'm just going to open this up. Excuse me. All right, so I'll open this up. Now, just like you're seeing that the terminal is suggesting for me, the first thing we want to do is we want to create this body and this signature. It's just the Stripe standard procedure for you to, start processing the data that comes with the webhook. So we do like this. We create the body, we create the signature, the event, and then we're going to verify the webhook. And I think this is what I'm supposed to do. So let me do it like this, and let me just add a comment here and say verify comment, verify webhook secret. Okay, so this, I've defined event here. Right here I'm now saying event is equal to stripe.webhook.construct event, and then it's going to take 3 arguments: the body, the signature, and the webhook secret, which is this one we created here. Then in the catch block, basically we're just saying that if there's an error, then just return the error.message and a status of 400. Okay, so that's basically what we're doing. So after this is done, let me just give some space. So after this is done, we want to now, create an event type variable. I like putting it, all of these things I'm doing, they're in Stripe documentation. It's not as if maybe I'm too intelligent and I'm, just inventing it. It's just Stripe documentation I'm following. So I've created this event to get the event.type. And so I'll just do a try catch block like so. And you remember, whenever I do a try catch block, I like to sort out the catch part first. So in the catch part of this try catch block, I'm just going to return, if there's an error, I'll just return the error and just say webhook error. All right. And so let's come to the try block, which is the really important one. Now remember, when we were creating the webhook, we said we wanted to watch out for a particular event, which is checkout.session.completed. All right, so checkout.session.completed. That's what we said we want to watch out for. Basically, what this just does is that if there is this event, we'll take the data that comes with this checkout event and process it. All right. If you're building a SaaS, obviously there are other things you need to watch out for, not just checkout.session.completed. So I could easily just say that if the event type is equal to checkout.session.completed, then I'll do something. But if I was building a SaaS and I have more than one event, then I rather just use a switch statement, which is in Stripe documentation. And in this switch statement, I'm just going to pass the event type. So this event type here. Okay. Now, this switch statement is going to have, it could have more than one cases, but let's just watch out for the case we want, which is session. Come on, help me out. Checkout.session.completed. Forgive me. So this is what we want to watch out for, this event. Now let's go ahead and open it up. When the event type is equal to checkout.session.completed, what do we want to do? Right now, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here, I'll say const, I'll create a session, and that session is going to be event.data.object, event.data.object. Okay, I'll tap that and just delete all of this. So this session is going to be event.data.object. Remember, this is our event that we defined here. So let me scroll down. Okay, we're good to go. Now, inside of this session, we have access to the user email and the amount the user paid. Those are the two things we're going to use to identify the transaction: the user email and then the amount that the user paid. So I'm just going to bring them in to save time. So tab. So this is the customer email and it's session.customer_details.email, and then this is the amount the user paid, session.amount_total. I'm dividing it by 100 because Stripe is going to give you that number in cents. So if you want to convert it to dollars, you have to divide it by 100. Good. Now I think this is a good time for us to log our data to the console, just to make sure that when we are testing, just to make sure that we're having the customer email and the amount. All right. Now that we have the customer email and the amount the customer paid, we can now update our database, our Postgres database. We can update the mailapi app and all of that. So let's start by updating our what's it called, Postgres database. So here I'll say, let's just say update Postgres SQL. All right, that's what we want to do first. So here I'm going to say const, and okay, it's giving me is this correct? No, I don't want to create, I want to find and then update. So here I'm going to say invoice, and then that's going to be equal to await. Hold on, let me make sure that I have async in the function. So it's async, yeah, it's asynchronous. So here I'm just going to say await, and then Prisma.invoice. I'll use the find first. So it's going to look in the database, and when it finds the invoice that matches the two parameters, so here, what are we looking for? We'll say where, like so, and I'm looking for the customer email. So that's the first. I'll add a comma here. Then I'm also looking for the amount and comma here. Then I'll also look for the status of pending. All right. So it's going to help me look for any data that matches this guy. So the customer email, the amount, and it has a status of pending. Excuse me. Well, I can come here and maybe say order by, and then I'll just use the created at and put descending. So it look for the latest one. So once this has been found, then I can now go ahead and, perform an operation on this invoice. So, but what if it's not found? Well, if it's not found, I obviously should throw an error. So let me say if there is no invoice. So if it's in a reward application, you want to process this situation properly. So, but for me, I'll just do a console.log. Okay, I can just do this really. Is there any other thing I need to do here? Okay, I'll just do a console.log invoice not found, and I'll just throw this. So, but what if it's found? What if there's an invoice that matches that? Then you want to update that invoice. So here I'm just going to say, wait, what did I say before? I said update Postgres. Okay, maybe I'll not add a comment. I'll say const updated. Sorry. Updated, and that's going to be equal to, you know what, I should just bring it in since we've updated something before. So I'm just going to say const updated, and that's going to be equal to prisma.invoice.update, and then I'll look for the ID that matches the invoice.id, and then I'll change the status to paid. So that's first. All right, so once I've done that, then I want to now go ahead and send email to the customer, send email to customer. So now for us to send an email to the customer, we actually need to head over to our mail API dashboard and create a template that is going to just be for invoice payment. So invoice receipt. Now I already created the template like that, so let me show you. I'll click on edit. So this is just, hello, thank you for your payment, here are the details, and then I show the purpose of the payment, the amount the user paid, and then the date, the payment date, and that's it basically. So it's just a very simple template, invoice receipt. So I'm going to go back, and this is it right here, invoice receipt. So you can create a template and design it the way you want. So this is what I'm going to use. So for me, I'm going to just, okay, I'm thinking if I should type it out. Okay, there's no need really, there's no need to type it out. Let's just use the send email that we used before. So in our invoice actions, we've sent an email before. All right, so let me look for it. Okay, look at it here, we sent an email here. So let me copy this send email function, and then I'm just going to go to my route, and then I'll paste that in. So make sure you import the send email. All right, so it's from this guy, and it has to be like this first, and it's to the customer email. The subject is going to be this. The template is going to be invoice receipt. If you come here, you see that that's the template we have. So invoice receipt, and then I'm just going to paste that in. Then the data is, we're going to have a purpose, and the purpose here now is going to be invoice.purpose. So invoice.purpose. Then the amount is going to be invoice.amount. Then I'm not sending the Stripe link, so I'm getting rid of it. Then what else? The status. Did I put status there? So there's purpose, there's amount, and there's paid at. Well, I didn't put status there, but you could also put that. So here I'm just going to say paid at, and then I'm just going to specify the today's date. So new date, like so, and then you're always going to have to convert it to ISO string, like so. All right, then you can also leave the reply to as well. Now obviously eventually when you verify your mail API domain, you can now send from your own domain. But if you've not verified your domain, then it has to be from mail.mailapi.dev. all right, so that's how we send the email. Then also, after you've sent an email to the user, you also want to update your mail API list. Remember, when we created an invoice, let me come back to my project. Remember, when we created an invoice, we synced our data. You can see here we have the data here. So and currently now the data is set to pending. So when the customer pays, you also want to update mail API list. It's mail API list. All right, so you want to do that. Now, basically, we already have a function to update the mail API list in our email actions. So we have these email actions here, and let me say, okay, right here, you can see update mail API list. So I'm just going to, use this function. So I'll come here. I would obviously have to say await because it's an asynchronous function, and then it's just going to take an object. So the first thing is you need to specify the email you want to update, which is the customer email. Then you also want to specify what you want to update. So in our case, it's custom fields, and that's an object that has like different properties. The property we are particularly interested in is the status. I want to set it to paid, and the date that the payment was made. So paid at and new date to ISO string. So that's what you want to do when the user has made payment. So make sure you also import everything that you use. So let me come here and see. So everything is imported. So let me format and save. Aha. So just like that, if we make a payment in Stripe from the URL that we added, let me come and remind you. If you go to your Stripe, this is the webhook. There's a URL. Let me come to webhook. Yeah, so if I say edit destination, you're going to see. So if we make a payment from this URL, then our application is going to pick it up. So this means that we have to actually deploy our application on Vercel, and it has to be to this URL before we can what's it called, start receiving the webhook. All right, so but so far so good, it should work. Now before we deploy this application, let us just add one more thing, and that is when the owner of the application manually marks the app as paid or pending, we also want to update mail API. So basically what I'll just do is I'll just in my Stripe webhook here, I'm just going to copy this guy, right? And then I'll come to my invoice action, and let's look for the mark as pending, mark as paid. Okay, I'll start with mark as paid. So here, basically, after the invoice has been updated to paid, I just want to come here and also update my mail API email. So let me make sure it's imported, and I'll just update it to paid. It's just that the email you want to update, it's invoice.customer.email, and then I'm just going to mark it as paid. Then also, whenever they call this function to mark an invoice as pending, you also want to, let me just copy this one, since so when they mark it as pending, you also want to update your mail API list and set it to pending. All right, so just then the pay that is going to be set to null, because obviously. All right, so that's it. I think those are the only two things that we need to do right from here. So now next I'm going to deploy this application, then I'm going to test the webhook. So I'll make a payment after deploying the application so that we can see that it actually fires. All right, thank you so much for watching this one. I'll see you in the next one. So now let's go ahead and deploy our application. So first off, we need to create a repository on GitHub. So I'll just click on new, and I will just say I want to create invoice manager tutorial. Let's go ahead. It's a public repository, so I'll just go ahead and click on create repository, and it's going to give me two sets of instructions. This is for if like you've not done anything on your Visual Studio Code, you've not initialized Git and all of that, but I have already initialized Git, so I'm just going to push the repository here. I'll copy this command, and then I'll come here. Now first off, I have to, okay, you know what, let me check to be sure that I'm not connected to any Git repository. So I'll say git remote -v, and you can see I'm not connected. It's not showing any connection. So first off, I want to push all the changes. I'll just say init, because to save time. So init, and then I'll say there's nothing to publish the app to. So that's when I'll now paste these guys in to push it to the new repository I just created. I'll hit enter, and then I'll just wait. So you see it's pushing and it's done. If you come to your repository here and you refresh it, you should now see the repository we just pushed. You can see it here. We have the .av.example and everything is fine. Great. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to open Vercel, right? And in Vercel, I'm going to deploy this new app. So create, I'll say, come on, be fast. I'll say I want to add new, and I want to add new, is it domain now, project? I can't even remember which one, project. All right, so that's right. So here I'm just going to search for invoice, and I have something that has the name of invoice, but I want to adjust GitHub app permission so that I can add the new one. So let's just go, and I'm just going to use my password. All right, so here I'm going to scroll down and select repository, and then I'm just going to add the, hold on, I'll say invoice so that it looks for, so invoice tutorial, this one, and then I'll save it. So now that I have the invoice manager tutorial, that's what I'm going to import. Now, before you like deploy your application, you need to, okay, you know what I'm going to do here? I'll rename it to invoice mgr, because that's what I saved the webhook as. So before you deploy, let me just confirm. So invoice mgr hyphen tutorial, perfect. You need to bring in your environment variables. So I'm just going to bring in mine. So I'll pause the video and do that. So I've brought in my environment variables. Now I will now click on deploy. Hopefully there is no deployment error and this thing goes once. So let me pause the video and wait. Oh, voila. So the deployment was successful, and I think we can continue to dashboard. Okay. Let's see. What do we have to do here? So I want to see what it looks like. So this is it, invoice mgr hyphen tutorial. So let me open it up and let's test. So right now, I am going to create a new invoice. So let me even delete the old one and create a new one. So I would say delete, and then I'm just going to create a new invoice. So let's, for the same user that is. So here I'll say purpose is, let's just go with marketing consulting. Then I'm just gonna go with you know what, let me just come to my Stripe and see one of the invoices I've created before, so that I don't have to create a new one. So I gotta come here to my payment links, and I'm just going to go with this web design consulting for John Doe, and it's supposed to be $10. Okay, so let's just go with this one. I'm going to copy the URL, and then I'll come here, here, and so let's just do web design consulting for John Doe. It's $10, and I think the email is, it has to be Donald Z. Then the invoice link, I'll paste the invoice link here, and I'll select a date, tomorrow, or maybe, I don't know, just give them some time, so like a week. So let's create the invoice. Now, what are we expected to have? Well, we're expected to get an email to this domain. So let me actually go there and delete what we have before now. Okay, I don't think we have any other thing. So we're supposed to get an email, and then so I'll click on create invoice. Fingers crossed. Aha. So the invoice has been created, and I want to go to the email to see. So we get the email actually. So now the user is expected to open that email and try to make payment from that email. So I'm just going to click on pay now, and let's see what happens. So it brings me to the payment page, and it's expected that after I pay this, it's going to match my email and the amount I just paid and update it to paid, all things being equal. So I've not tested the payment function before. That's for this new app. So let's try it now and see. So pay, and I'll be so glad if it just goes once and I don't have to troubleshoot or check for any error and stuff like that. But anyhow, we're still going to just, so the payment is successful, and I'm just going to come here to and then I'll refresh this page. Voila. So you see here, it has actually been changed to paid. And also, if I come to my mail API dashboard and I just refresh the list, then I should see that it has, oh, okay, something is wrong here because it's still pending here. So let me refresh it again just to be sure. Okay, so you can see here that it is still pending. All right, so which means we just need to check that, in fact, the error will even be in Vercel. So if I go to deployment and I click on this deployment, then I can click on logs, and then I'll just see that you can see this is payment blah blah blah. So there's an error here. Hold on, I think this is the error, API stripe. So if you scroll down, you're just going to see, I'm not sure what is going on, but I'm not seeing the details of the error. This is supposed to be the error, right? Anyway, let me just go to the code and we'll just fix it from the code. So I'm back to my code, and where I need to be is I need to be in the webhook route. So first off, this is update mailapi email, and I'm sending the customer email, right? And then custom fields plural, and then I'm sending the status, I'm marking it as paid, and then I'm also, you know, marking the paid at. So this should actually work seamlessly without any problem. Oh, okay, I think I see, I'm not sure, but I think I see where the problem is. After, hold on, this is my catch block, right? So let me just give a space here. No, it should actually just work by itself. Let me see if this email was sent. Troubleshooting. It's been so long, I did some troubleshooting. So I'm going to refresh this guy. Aha, so I think I know where the problem is. You can see that we didn't receive another email after we made the payment. This is the initial email notifying the user of the invoice, right? But we didn't, you know, receive the email, another email when the payment was complete. So there's something definitely wrong from here. So let's just look at it. This is the send email. Did we import it? Let's go up. So we imported send email and update email from email actions. I think I'm supposed to add a break after. I'm supposed to add a break. So after the update, this is the update. I'm supposed to come here and say break, but I don't think that's the problem. Then I'm also supposed to have a default. So let me just bring it after this guy here. I'm just going to come here and just add a default where I'll just do a console.log and whatever. But I honestly don't think that is the problem. So let's take a second look at it. This is the function that updates the invoice, and I think it updated it properly. Now this one is supposed to send an email and to the customer email. So this is where the problem is. This purpose is not defined. So I just pasted it out of in a hurry. So you know what, let me just change this to payment confirmed. Payment confirmed, or payment confirmed seems fine. And this should be invoice dot purpose. All right, that works. Then I'm sending the invoice receipt, and I'm sending this purpose amount and pay that. So that's also fine. So let's just check here too and just be sure. So customer email, and this will also work. So this was where the problem was coming from. All we need to do is to save and to redeploy. So I'll come here and then I will say, what am I going to say? I'll say fix webhook, and then I'll just commit that. So while it's committing, I'm going to come back to my local code here, and I will set this back to unpaid, mark as pending. All right, so let's go, and it should just deploy in a couple of minutes and we'll test again. So let's try to make payment again. The deployment is complete, so I would go to my email and try to make payment again. All right, so I'm just going to use the test credit card, and then I'm just going to say pay. So fingers crossed, everything should work out perfect now. All right, so I just got an email, which means it has processed. So this is the payment, and I'm going to come here just to be sure that I actually got an email. You can see payment confirmed, and it just gives me details about my payment. All right, then if I come here to the application and I refresh the application, I should see that it has changed to paid. And also if I come to my mail API list and I refresh it, then I should, if I hover, you can see that it has changed to paid as well, and I can see the paid at, which is right here. So that works. All right, so the last thing we want to do is we want to create an automation such that if an invoice is created and let's just say 24 hours after, we're going to set an automation rule, and an email will be sent to that user. So we're going to do that in the next video. All right, so we want to set up the automation like I said, and the first thing you need to do before you can set up automations on Mail API, you need to verify your domain. And the domain I want to verify is invoicemanager.xyz, which happens to be a domain I bought, like I said. So I'm just going to click on start domain verification. Now, if you just buy a fresh domain and you've not added any DNS and all of that, there's no way to know if that domain is exists. You're not going to be able to verify it. So here I'm just going to click on initiate domain verification, and once it checks that that domain actually exists and all of that, in other words, you've added some sort of record to that domain, then it's going to give you this txt record that you can add. So first off, I'm going to add this txt record to my domain, and I'm hosting the domain on Cloudflare. So let's start by adding this one. So I'll copy this and I'll come here, and then this is the domain right here, invoicemanager.xyz, and I want to go to my DNS records. I think you can just look for DNS right here and click on records. Aha. So once you've done that, you just want to go ahead and start adding records. So I'll say add record, and you want to go for the txt record like so. So I'll just say txt, and then I'm just going to put the name, and let's go back to my, and I'll copy the value and I'll slot the value here. So that's it. Then you just need to save. So we've added the first one. Then we come back here. Now we need to add these CNAME records. So there are like 3. So it's going to take a while. So let me just do CNAME. You can forward this pass, by the way. CNAME record. I'll add the first one, and let me just say CNAME. So put the value and make sure it's DNS only, because sometimes it can say proxied. Make sure it's DNS only. So I'll come here, I'll copy the value of the first one, and then I'll put it here. So that's the first one. I'll say save. Let's do this, the second one. So the second one is this. So copy this, come here, say you want to add another record. It's a CNAME record. Paste that, come here and copy the value, and then slot it in here, and then just add it. Then the last, it didn't even take time. So the last one is record 3. Copy this guy and come here, say you want to add a record, you want to add a CNAME record, and then put the name, come here, copy the value and slot that in here. So just like that, we've added the CNAME record for the 3. So we are good to go. So once you've done this, what you need to do next is you come here and you click on check verification status. So I'm going to click that, and it tells me domain verification is pending. So I'm just going to give it some time. It says that after blah blah blah, we should wait for up to 48 hours. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it like 10 minutes because it shouldn't take long, and then I'll try and check again. Maybe, hopefully I didn't make any mistake when I was copying and pasting it. So that's it. So let me try again. I didn't even wait up to 10 minutes, but let me just try again. So it's still pending. Why is this taking so long? Okay. So I just waited a couple of minutes, maybe like 10 minutes actually, and now click check verification status, and as you can see, it has been verified. So now that it has been verified, what that means is that you can send an email from any email that is associated with this domain. Do you get? So what I can do to actually update this is that I can come to my code, and you see here where I'm sending this email and I'm sending from no reply. it's not going to work anymore because I have added my email. So what I need to do is I need to say any email, like for example, hello at invoicemanager.xyz. You see now? So that's what you need to do. So I'm just going to copy that, save this, and then even in the place where I create the invoice, in my invoice action, where did I send the email? At the top. So at the top here, okay, so this is where I send an email. I also need to maybe put hello at, and I'll put that domain there. So subsequently, if I want to send email, it has to be from my own email because I'm no longer testing. So I'm just going to say added email or added custom email, and then I'm just going to, commit that. So now, how are we going to set up an automation in what's it called, in mailapi.dev? So you're going to come here to your project and click on automation. So here, I remember in our email API we have a custom field property of status, and it could be pending or paid. So I'm going to come to my automation and I'll say I want to create an automation, and then I will say invoice reminder. Okay, so before you create an automation, you actually have to create the email template you want to send to your users. So let me come here to my email template, and I'm not sure if I've created an invoice reminder template, but I don't know, maybe I'll just use this invoice tutorial. I'll just repeat the same thing. So I'll just send it to the user again and just change the subject. So let's come here back to project, and I'll click on this project, and then I'll click on automation and create automation, and the name of that automation is going to be invoice reminder. All right, and then I'm going to say that, let's come to the trigger. I want this automation to be sent, let's say 24 hours, or let's say 1 day. All right, 1 day after the user, one day after the email has been added to our list. So that's like 1 day after the invoice has been created. All right, so that's it. This is fine. Then I can come to email and say that I want to send this invoice tutorial, and here I'm just going to specify the variables. So for example, purpose, now it's going to be custom field dot purpose. All right, then maybe I'm just going to copy the custom fields, the amount to be custom fields dot amount, then the status will be custom field dot status. Okay, it's already there. Then the due date is custom field dot due date, and then finally the invoice link is custom field dot invoice link. I hope I don't have any typographical error. So here I'm just going to say the subject is going to be invoice mgr, then I'll just say invoice reminder. All right, so from name I'm just going to say maybe invoice mgr. That's just going to be my name. Now I can now say hello at, I'm not sure if I still have it in my clipboard or I don't. So I'll say hello at invoice manager .xyz, and just to make sure I spelled that correctly, I think that's correct. Then the reply to email, you can just put any email, maybe no reply, for example, or whatever it is you want to do. No reply at invoice manager.xyz. So let's just do that and say no, or just, you can even reply to this guy if this guy exists. So once you've done this, the last thing you need to do is to come to advanced tab, and this is the send window. So between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m. my current time zone is this time zone. Then you can just scroll down and add an audience filter. So for example, I can come to my custom field and say, look, I only want to target custom field.status that is equal to pending. So I only want to target users that their invoice status property is equal to pending. So that's the only users I want to target. All right, currently we don't have any user like that. Now, just so that you can see that it actually sends the email, I'm going to come to the trigger and say that I want to send it, let's just say 5 minutes, because I want you to just see that it actually works flawlessly. So I want to send a reminder 5 minutes after the invoice was created. So now let's go ahead and create this automation, and voila, so the automation has been created. Obviously it's not going to send to anybody because we don't have any user with a pending automation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come here and create a new automation. So let me refresh the page here, and I'm going to create a new automation. So create new automation. The purpose, let's just go with something social media consulting, and the amount is just going to be maybe $100. Customer email. Now I can use any email because I've verified. So let me just go with admin.zeno, and then let's just use any link that we've used before. Oh no, definitely not this. So let's just look for something else. Okay, so any link we've used before. Then I'm going to set a due date. So set something and then create the invoice. So creating. All right, so the invoice has been created and is set to pending. Now, if I come to my email API and I come to my list, you're going to see that we now have this other guy and it's set to pending. So let me open this email and show you so that you know that it got the email. So you can see right here that this guy got the email, and this is it right here, social media consulting, blah blah blah. This is the amount they're supposed to pay. It's currently pending. They can go ahead and pay, but I'm not even interested in paying. I just want to show you how the automation works. Remember, I set the automation to send 5 minutes after the user has been created. So I'm just going to wait for a couple of minutes and and watch to see. If I refresh this guy here, you see that it just created just now. So let me wait and I'll be back and we'll check if the automation actually sent. All right, so I actually went and forgot about the automation I set, but if you come to automation, you're going to see that we have, in the sense, we have one. And if you click on the view logs, you're going to see that this is when it was sent and this is the time it was sent. So that's it. So I'm just going to close that and actually come to the email. So this is the email, and as you can see here, we have this image invoice manager invoice reminder. So basically it's just a reminder of the invoice. You can see all the details were gotten from mailapi data, and the user can still go ahead and make the payments. So that's how easy it is for you to automate your invoice manager. And if you, for example, we set this one to shoot in 5 minutes, but ideally, obviously you don't want to do 5 minutes, so you can come and edit, and you can say, okay, you want it to be, let's say 24 hours. You can say 24 hours or just 1 day after it was created, and then you can save changes. So this automation is going to fire if after 24 hours that you sent the user the invoice, they've not made the payment. It's going to fire. So you can go ahead and create like an automation for 1 24-hour reminder, 2-day reminder, 3-day reminder, as so on and so forth, as much as you want. So that's how easy it is for you to create your automation with your invoice manager. I hope you really learned something in this tutorial, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, then just have some engagement on the video, leave a like or something, and then check the links in the description of this video and engage with them as well. All right, that's about it for this one. I will see you in another one.